This is a sample of the information provided as part of the flexible training resources available through HACCP.com. Our training courses are designed to provide training participants with an understanding of food safety and quality system elements, and also offer user-friendly assessment activities and competency checklists to complete the training cycle. Primary production. Key definitions for primary production. Chemical hazard, the danger posed to food safety by the contamination of food by chemical substances, such as pesticides, detergents, additives, and toxic metals. Hazard analysis critical control point, or HACCP. HACCP is a food safety methodology that relies on the identification of critical control points in all stages of food business processes. Preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance includes tasks performed on equipment, premises, and surrounds to prevent failure. It is a proactive process designed to prevent food safety and quality incidents. Preventative maintenance includes regular scheduled and procedurized inspection, cleaning, and replacement of worn parts, materials, and systems. Preventive maintenance helps to prevent parts, materials, and systems failure by ensuring their good working order. Primary production, the production of raw materials for consumption or for further processing. Reactive maintenance, a form of maintenance in which equipment and facilities are repaired only in response to a breakdown or a fault. Transport. Transport or transportation is the movement of items from one location to another. Withholding period, the time interval after the use of a chemical in or on foods before which the foods can be safely consumed. Primary production development. When considering the development, documentation, and implementation of primary production within food safety and quality management systems, the following information should be considered to ensure effective outcomes. About primary production. Primary production elements. Primary production risk management. Primary production environment. About chemical control. About primary production. Primary production requires special attention regarding the identification and control of all food safety hazards, as it is most often the first step in the food supply chain. This factor can define the safety of the foods involved at later steps, including supply, processing, and customer availability. The control of chemical use is paramount within primary production, as it is a point at which chemicals such as pesticides, insecticides, fertilizers, antibiotics, fungicides, among others, are applied directly to foods, or their surroundings. This produces issues of concern where the chemical content within, or on the foods produced are still present at the time the products become available to consumers. Adhering to the prescribed application rates and procedures for chemicals, in conjunction with allowing the appropriate withholding periods, forms the basis upon which such hazards are controlled. Primary production is also the step at which foods are readily exposed to higher than acceptable levels of pathogenic bacteria, whether it is through the soil, animal feces, or other environmental factors. These types of hazards are generally controlled through well-structured and developed procedures, which define practices which facilitate the production of safe and suitable foodstuffs for consumers. Procedures must be developed, documented, and implemented to ensure a food business facilitating primary production does not introduce hazards into food consumption or further processing. Primary production elements. It is important to consider the following elements in relation to maintaining appropriate primary production standards. Primary production risk management. It is important to consider the staff who are involved with the monitoring of primary production critical limits. They must be competent in all food safety related activities involved, and must be of sound ability to make objective judgments. Hazards present may include chemicals, foreign objects, and pathogenic microorganisms. Primary production should be managed in a way that ensures that food is safe and suitable for its intended use. Where necessary, this should include avoiding the use of geographical areas where the environment poses a threat to the safety of food. Controlling contaminants, pests, and diseases of animals and plants in such a way as not to pose a threat to food safety. Adopting practices and measures to ensure food is produced under appropriately hygienic conditions. And reducing the likelihood of introducing a hazard which may adversely affect the safety of food, or its suitability for consumption at later stages of the food chain. The potential effects of primary production activities on the safety and suitability of food should be considered at all times. In particular, this includes identifying any specific points in such activities where a high probability of food contamination may exist, and taking specific measures to minimize that probability. The HACCP-based approach may assist in the management of such measures. Primary producers should implement appropriate and effective measures to control contamination from air, soil, water, feedstuffs, chemical and natural fertilizers, pesticides, veterinary drugs or any other agents or chemicals used in primary production. Control plant and animal health so that it does not pose a threat to human health through food consumption, or adversely affect the suitability of the product. And protect food sources from fecal and other contamination. In particular, care should be taken to manage waste and store harmful substances such as agricultural chemicals appropriately. On-farm programs that achieve specific food safety goals have become a valuable element of primary production. Primary production environment. It is important that specific consideration is given to the environments used for primary production, specifically related to the identification and control of potential hazards. Factors for consideration may include the potential for raw sewage to flow onto or into primary production areas, any previous chemical applications within the bounds or around current or proposed primary production sites, and the capability of the primary production and associated processing sites to withstand environmental issues such as flooding. Detailed risk assessments should be documented to demonstrate how these elements have been considered in relation to each individual primary production scenario. If your food business supplies foodstuffs manufactured to a customer's specifications, it is important to consider any specific primary production requirements in relation to their items. Document. A document provides guidance and/or direction for performing work, making decisions, or rendering judgments which affect the safety or quality of the products or services that customers receive. Documented policies, procedures, work instructions and schedules form the basis of any food safety and quality management system. The following documentation formats may be considered to ensure ongoing compliance with specified requirements for primary production. Primary production policy, primary production development procedures, primary production implementation procedures and work instructions, primary production monitoring procedures, primary production corrective and preventative action procedures, primary production verification schedule, primary production verification procedures, primary production validation schedule, primary production validation procedures, primary production training procedures. If your food business supplies foodstuffs manufactured to a customer's specifications, it is important to consider any specific primary production documentation requirements in relation to their items. You may wish to visit the Primary Production Templates section of HACCP.com for examples of primary production documentation, record and resource formats commonly applied within food safety and quality systems. Implementation. Implementation is the application of documented food safety and quality system elements into the actual business operation. The implementation of primary production within any food business requires genuine commitment from senior management, staff and visitors to ensure the nominated goals of implementation are achievable on an ongoing basis. It is a step which requires significant planning and consideration of general and specific food business circumstances to ensure the outcomes of primary production do not negatively impact upon the safety and quality of the food items dispatched from the business. Implementation of primary production must include the clear definition of responsibilities and authorities for all levels of participation by senior management, staff and visitors to the site. When implementing primary production within a food safety and quality system, you may wish to consider the following requirements prior to completion: communication and display of the primary production policy, completion of verification and validation of primary production development procedures, availability of primary production implementation procedures and work instructions, availability of primary production monitoring procedures and record templates where applicable, Availability of primary production corrective and preventative action procedures and record templates where applicable. Availability of the primary production verification schedule. Availability of primary production verification procedures. Availability of the primary production validation schedule. Availability of primary production validation procedures. Completion of primary production training procedures. Completion of product design and development requirements related to primary production. Completion of process design and development requirements related to primary production. Completion of training for team members who have responsibilities and involvement within primary production. Completion of competency approval for team members who have responsibilities and involvement within primary production. If your food business supplies foodstuffs manufactured to a customer's specifications, it is important to consider any specific primary production implementation requirements in relation to their items. Need help with primary production? Find an experienced food safety and quality consultant at HACCP.com. Monitoring. Monitoring is the act of reviewing and confirming measurable parameters of a defined process or product status. Monitoring requirements within food industry sectors are generally identified against limits of acceptability defined within HACCP plans, implementation procedures and work instructions. Monitoring usually includes some element of record keeping, which may be maintained manually or through digital systems. It is important to consider that advancements of technology have spawned many systems and processes which are self-monitored and/or self-adjusted when variances are identified, regardless of the system used. The goal of any monitoring activity is to provide sufficient evidence that any limit of acceptability has been met. Traditional primary production monitoring requirements include manual recording and the application of corrective actions when the result of monitoring are found to be outside acceptable limits. Corrective actions should also generally be strongly linked to the monitoring process where applied to ensure full traceability of the applied actions. Common monitoring activities and record formats may be applicable to primary production. Receival records. Receival records are commonly maintained to include details of batches or lots of items received. These recorded batch or lot numbers can be used to assist in traceability activities. Primary production records. Primary production records commonly contain details of the batch or lot of items as they are used. Chemical records. A chemical application log, also known as a spray record, is used to record the application of chemicals, and most importantly, their withholding periods. Did you know that HACCP.com includes resources that allow you to create, manage and implement GFSI and HACCP-based food safety and quality programs? Improve your food safety and quality skills and knowledge? Train and develop your team to create better food safety and quality outcomes? Find suppliers and service providers to partner with your business? The information and training resources available through HACCP.com include a variety of formats, such as website content, MP4, MP4 and text, MP3, PDF and slideshow. Are you ready to take the next step in your food compliance journey? Visit HACCP.com today to create your profile and access the full versions of our food safety and quality information packages and much more.